Today, we're looking at an orange ink by Atramentis, Michelangelo or Ochre Yellow. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. There's timestamps down below so that you can skip around, but if you got the time, I would appreciate if you check out the entire video. Also, if you're interested, you can check me out over on Instagram, and if you're new here and like fountain pen inks, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this Jinhao 51A with a fine nib, used it to write for a day, and wrote my notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There is an additional writing sample that'll happen later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding or ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading going on, 8 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. There's very subtle shading going on if you look at the word brown, or you look at the word fox. 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show some color variation, and we are getting it in the writing. Next up is Tomoe River, with no bleeding and minor Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, and 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, and we didn't get any. And Rhodia. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading going on. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading, very subtly in and out. It's nice to look at. 9 seconds to dry. Medium is a hair darker than the extra fine, a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some nice shading, looking at the word brown, looking at the word quick, at the word over, a lot of it there, very subtle in and out, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show plenty of color variation, and we get it in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see this kind of peach line at the bottom. And then what's moved up is a very faint yellow with a kind of light red, pink leaning color at the top. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And that peach line on the bottom is a little more there. That yellow is just as noticeable as it was before. And that kind of the reddish tone now at the top, it's a little more of a reddish tone. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation because of the lowercase h. I'm afraid of that blowout and losing important things. Water is reactivating and lifting. If you look at the lower edge, you start to see the white of the paper coming through. That's all that it took to get it out of my pen. Pen flush is doing about the same as water and nothing more. And the 1/3 bleach solution, which you would not need, completely removes it from the page. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. Atramentis Ochre Yellow has a viscosity of 2.35, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with the realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis Ochre Yellow has an average dry time of 11 seconds, making it a fast drying ink. Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis Ochre Yellow, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice green and chose Robert Oster's Peppermint. The second writing sample is done on Life, Levenger, and Franklin Christoph paper. Here we have Life paper, one of my favorites. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It has spots of shading that we get to see coming through. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading. This tone of paper is really getting it to step up in the writing. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, just a little bit lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading throughout. 9 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine shows the color variation that we got. The medium doesn't really. It's much better in the writing. And Levenger. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no real shading. The extra fine is lighter than a stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very nice shading. 6 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. This has some really nice shading here. It looks great. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubbies, far left to far right, do show some color variation, and that's what we get in the writing samples. And last up, Franklin Christoph, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's because it's a more absorbent paper. 3 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. Scrubby of the extra fine shows color variation, although we're not getting it. The medium shows none, and we got none, and that is all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Atramentis Michelangelo's Ochre Yellow? I didn't like it. It's not a yellow ink. It's not an ochre ink, not as I think of the color ochre. It left me disappointed with that. Now, it's not an ugly color. It's not the color that I would expect to go with its name, which turns to a barrier for me. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that broader, wetter pens put down a much more orange tone that did manage to bring across some shading. If you've made it this far, and according to my analytics, 50% of you aren't, and you enjoyed it, give me a thumbs up. If you are not subscribed, I would invite you to subscribe, and thanks for watching.